Welcome back to the Lost Tactician. I'm your guide through the shadows of military history, where survival means understanding not just what soldiers could do, but what they were never supposed to do. Throughout the Second World War, millions of men and women fought with issued equipment designed by strategists and tested by necessity. But some items, tools that seemed like tactical advantages, crossed a line so dark that they were forbidden during combat itself. Today, we're uncovering 10 pieces of gear that were so devastating, toxic, or inhumane that they remain banned 80 years later. These aren't tales of glory, they're stories of desperation, scientific recklessness, and the hard-won lessons written into international law. Stay with me as we explore what happens when survival instinct meets the machinery of total war. Category 1. Devastating weaponry. Phosphorus grenades and the burns that wouldn't heal. Picture, if you will, a soldier in the Ardennes, January 1945, his fingers numb from 30 below cold, ordered to clear a trench bristling with enemy positions. Phosphorus grenades seemed like the answer. They created dense smoke screens and flushed targets from fortifications. But honestly, the reality was far more sinister. When phosphorus ignites, it reaches temperatures exceeding 800 degrees Celsius. Soldiers who deployed these grenades witnessed something nearly impossible to unsee. The particles embedded themselves in flesh and reignited when bandaged or exposed to air. Water only accelerated the burning. By 1977, the Geneva Conventions restricted phosphorus weapons to smoke and illumination only, recognizing what frontline medics had always known: some weapons inflict suffering beyond military necessity. Expanding bullets, often called the hollow point horror, were, well, a grim innovation of the battlefield. Deep in soldiers' pockets, hidden from inspectors, lay dum-dum rounds, cartridges that had been filed or scored so they'd expand violently upon impact. The logic behind them was simple and, honestly, quite brutal: maximum internal devastation with just a single shot. The risk was, equally stark. If soldiers were captured with expanding ammunition, they faced immediate execution, no questions asked. These rounds were already deemed violations of the Hague Convention before the war even began, but still, desperate men smuggled them to the front. Trench knives, steel designed to tear. Some weapons, at least in theory, seemed conceptually sound, until their actual deployment revealed their true savage nature. Trench knives with brass knuckle guards and serrated blades, crafted specifically to tear flesh, became, enduring symbols of close-quarters brutality. When these tools were used, and they were, the results were so severe that even hardened commanders recognized their necessity was outweighed by their inhumanity. Modern militaries abandon them, not from squeamishness, but from the recognition that efficiency need not demand cruelty. Category 2, performance enhancers and chemical ruin, the amphetamine epidemic, benzodrine and Pervitin. Imagine commanding a unit where your soldiers haven't slept in 72 hours, yet their eyes remain wide, their hands steady, their minds sharp. This was the narcotic promise of wartime stimulants. British forces distributed benzodrine inhalers to pilots and infantrymen. German production lines churned out Pervitin, methamphetamine in pill form, by the millions. For a brief window, these drugs worked. Exhaustion vanished. Fear receded, but the cost accumulated silently. Soldiers developed tremors, paranoia, and cardiovascular damage. After the war, addiction swept through veteran populations, destroying lives on the home front just as thoroughly as enemy fire had on the battlefield. The ban on military-issued stimulants emerged not from regulation, but from witnessing an entire generation's biochemistry rewritten by chemical desperation. Quicklime heat packs, warmth at any cost. On the Russian front, where temperatures plummeted to -40 degrees, soldiers faced a choice between frostbite and chemical burns. Quicklime heat packs, calcium oxide mixed with water, generated intense heat, but their instability was, honestly, legendary. Moisture activated them unpredictably. Some soldiers suffered severe chemical burns to the torso when packs ignited in their field jackets. Others absorbed toxic fumes. Ethylene glycol, the poison, mistaken for salvation. Picture, if you will, the desperation. Soldiers freezing to death on the front lines, fully aware that antifreeze, sitting right there in vehicle radiators nearby, could possibly generate some internal warmth. Some actually did drink it. The results, sadly, were catastrophic: organ failure, blindness, and, well, death. These days, ethylene glycol formulas include bittering agents specifically designed to prevent ingestion. It's a regulation born directly from the tragedy of those soldiers who thought, in their desperation, that survival meant drinking poison. Category 3. Hazardous materials and sabotage. Asbestos, the silent hazard. You know, military procurement officers back in the 1940s saw asbestos as nothing short of miraculous: fireproof, insulating, durable. Asbestos, the silent hazard. Military procurement officers in the 1940s really viewed asbestos as miraculous: fireproof, insulating, durable. Cloth pads lined with asbestos were issued for insulation and protection. But honestly, no one calculated the decades of latency before mesothelioma emerged. Cloth pads lined with asbestos were issued for insulation and protection. Yet no one calculated the decades of latency before mesothelioma emerged. Veterans who survived the war's violence, well, they often fell to lung cancer and asbestos-related diseases in the 1960s and 70s. The ban, came not from wartime wisdom, but from the sobering realization that some hazards are invisible until, sadly, they're fatal. Booby-trapped personal items. Perhaps most disturbing were explosives disguised as lighters, mess kits, or personal effects. These were weapons designed to kill indiscriminately, without mercy or warning. These 10 items represent something quite profound: humanity's capacity for both ingenuity and recklessness in the crucible of total war. Soldiers were desperate. Officers were under impossible pressure. Scientists and manufacturers, well, they provided solutions without always calculating the consequences. The bans that followed, international law, military regulation, safety protocols, emerged from blood spilled and lives, forever altered. Modern military equipment, really reflects these lessons. Thermal protection now uses safe fuels. Stimulant use is strictly monitored and controlled. Weapons are designed with precision to minimize unintended harm. And body armor, well, it's tested for safety, not just protection. Every regulation you've heard about exists because someone somewhere learned the price of its absence. As we face new survival challenges in an uncertain world, these historical lessons remain relevant. The question isn't just how to survive, but how to survive with integrity intact, a principle that transforms warriors into something greater than weapons. If you found value in understanding how history shapes modern survival ethics, I invite you to like this video, subscribe to The Lost Tactician for more deep dives into military history and tactical wisdom, and share this with anyone who understands that knowledge of the past protects the future. Thank you for joining me in the shadows of history. Stay resilient, stay tactical, stay human.